Hey guys, tonight we slip through the dusty streets of ancient Sumer, where the sun bakes the mud brick walls of Uruk and the air hums with the chatter of merchants and the clink of clay tablets. You're not here for the bustling markets, though. You're headed to the Iduba, the Sumerian school where young scribes to be sweat over wedge shaped writing and face punishments that'd make your modern detention look like a nap. Picture yourself dodging donkeys, your sandals slapping against the packed earth as you clutch a fresh clay tablet, heart pounding because you're late. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this unscathed. These teachers don't mess around. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the Iduba, a low windowless room that smells of damp clay and sweat. The walls are lined with shelves of tablets, each one etched with cuneiform. Those sharp, wedge-shaped marks that look like a flock of tiny birds took a wrong turn. Your teacher, a scribe with a beard like a tangled reed mat, glares from the front. His name's something unpronounceable, like Enlil Zid, but you just call him Sir because forgetting his name means trouble. The other students, all boys your age, sit cross-legged on the floor, scratching at their tablets with styluses. You're training to be a scribe, a big deal in Sumer, around 3000 BCE, because writing means power recording taxes, laws even the king's boasts about smiting enemies. Scribes were the backbone of Sumerian society. Historians note they managed everything from grain inventories to temple hymns. But the path to scribedom brutal. One slip and you're not just failing a test, you're facing the kind of discipline that makes you wish you'd stayed home herding goats. The room's quiet, save for the soft scrape of styluses and the occasional cough. You slide into your spot, trying not to draw attention, but Sir's eyes lock onto you like a hawk spotting a mouse. Late again, he says, voice low, but sharp enough to cut through the heat. You mumble an excuse about a cart blocking the street, but he's not buying it. In Sumerian schools, tardiness isn't just rude. It's a crime against the order of the universe. The gods, they believe, love precision, and you've just offended Inanna herself. You're told to stand in the corner holding your tablet above your head until your arms scream. It's not the worst punishment yet, but it's a taste of what's coming. Your classmates snicker, and you wonder if they're laughing at you or just relieved it's not them. Joke's on them, though. In this place, everyone's turn comes eventually. Now let's talk about the rules. The Iduba isn't just a school. It's a fortress of discipline. You're expected to memorize hundreds of cuneiform signs, over 600. Some say, though, historians still argue whether students learn them all, or just enough to fake competence. Each sign is a puzzle, and you've got to nail the angle of every wedge. Mess up. That's not a try again moment. The teachers or Amiya run this place like a military camp. You're not here to have fun. You're here to serve the city, the temple, the king. One quirky tidbit, some tablets hint at students being forced to write insults about themselves as punishment. Imagine carving "I am a lazy ox" 50 times in clay. Humiliating, right? But it's effective. You're already sweating, and not just from the Mesopotamian sun. Your tablet still raised, your arms trembling, and Sir's watching, waiting for you to crack. The corner's your home for now, and it gives you a moment to notice the room's details. The floor's packed dirt, cool under your feet, but gritty enough to remind you this isn't a palace. A small altar in the corner holds a clay figurine of Nisaba, goddess of writing, her serene face, mocking your struggle. You wonder if she's secretly enjoying this. The other boys keep their heads down, but you catch a smirk from the kid next to you, Gilgamesh Jr., or whatever he's called. He's the one who always knows the signs for beer and barley, but forgets everything else. You'd laugh, but your arms are burning, and the tablet feels like it's gained a talent of silver since you started holding it. Oh, and a talent that's about 30 kilos. Sumerians love their weird weight measurements. This punishment holding the tablet aloft is just the warm up. You're learning the Aduba's golden rule obedience over everything. Step out of line, and you're not just disrespecting Sir, you're disrespecting the whole system that keeps Sumer running. The city's wealth depends on accurate records, and sloppy scribes mean lost grain, unpaid taxes, or worse, angry gods. You're starting to get why they're so intense. But as your shoulders ache and the clay digs into your palms, you can't help but think surely there's a better way to learn than this spoiler. There isn't. Not here. You're stuck, and the day's only getting started. A fly buzzes past, landing on your tablet, and you resist the urge to swat at Sir's still watching, and you're not about to add to your troubles. You're not alone in this misery, though. Every boy in this room has felt the sting of the Aduba's rules. The system's been like this for centuries, with tablets from Nippur and Ur showing the same strict vibe. Some scholars think the harshness was to weed out the weak. Only the toughest could handle the scribe's life. Others say it was just cultural. Sumerians thought suffering built character. Either way, you're living it now. Your arms are numb, but you keep them up because dropping that tablet means worse. Like maybe cleaning the school's latrine pit. Yeah, you heard right. That's a real punishment, and it's as gross as it sounds. You'd rather face 1,000 cuneiform signs than that. As the lesson drags on, you overhear Sir droning about the importance of perfect wedges. One crooked sign, he says, and the temple's grain count is off. The gods notice. You roll your eyes, but only inwardly. Eye rolling's another offense here. You're starting to see the pattern. Everything's a test, and failing means pain. Gilgamesh Jr. whispers a joke about Sir's beard looking like a sheep's backside, and you almost snort. Bad move. Sir's head snaps toward you, and you're saved only because another kid drops his stylus. Distraction achieved, but you're not out of the woods. The Aduba's a pressure cooker, and you're just one wrong move from being the next example. Welcome to Sumerian school life, where every day's a gamble, and the stakes are your dignity, your lunch, or worse. You're back in the Aduba, the air thick with the scent of damp clay and the faint tang of fear. Your arms still ache from yesterday's tablet-holding punishment, but you're seated now, stylus in hand, staring at a soft clay square that feels like your entire future. The task is simple. Copy. A list of cuneiform signs for common goods. Barley, sheep, beer. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. One wobbly wedge, one shaky line, and you're in for it. The teacher, that same bearded scribe you're calling Sir, paces behind you, his reed stylus tucked into his belt like a sword. You're trying to focus, but the pressure's real. Every mark you make is a test of survival in this ancient Sumerian classroom, where mistakes aren't just corrected, they're avenged. You press the stylus into the clay, aiming for a crisp wedge to form the sign for grain. It's not bad, but the angle's off, and the clay smudges under your sweaty fingers. You glance up, hoping Sir didn't notice, but his shadow looms over you. Sloppy, he mutters, snatching your tablet. He holds it up for the class to see, and your stomach drops. This, he says, is what happens when you disrespect Nisaba's gift. Nisaba, that goddess of writing, must be having a rough day if she's this mad about your wonky wedge. The other boys snicker, and you want to sink into the dirt floor. Public shaming's a big deal here. Historians confirm that Sumerian teachers used it to
keep students in line, especially in cities like Ur and Nippur around 2500 BCE. It's not just embarrassment, it's a lesson etched into your soul.
Sir hands back your tablet, but not before ordering you to smooth it out and start over. You grab the smoothing tool, a flat piece of wood, and scrape the clay clean, your hands trembling. Starting over means extra work, and you're already behind. The kid next to you, the one you're mentally calling Gilgamesh Jr., for his cocky grin, leans over and whispers, "Better not mess up again, or you'll be scrubbing pots with the servants." You shoot him a look, partly because he's right, partly because you're jealous he's already done with his tablet. Joke's on him, though. You spot a crooked sign on his work. Bet Sir catches that later. The Aduba's rules are unforgiving, and the punishments for bad cuneiform are legendary. You've heard stories, some say a student in Lagash was once made to carry his flawed tablet through the city, shouting his mistakes to passers-by. Scholars debate whether this was common or just a tall tale to scare kids like you, but it feels real enough when Sir's glaring. You try again, pressing harder this time, but the clay's too soft and the wedge collapses into a sad little smear. You mutter something about the clay being cursed, which gets a chuckle from the boy behind you. Bad move. Sir's ears are sharper than a bronze dagger. Silence, he barks, and you're all back to scratching in tense quiet. Let's talk about the stakes. Scribes in Sumer weren't just nerds with styluses. They were the glue holding society together. A mainstream fact cuneiform wasn't just for writing poetry or love letters. It tracked everything from tax records to temple offerings. One bad tablet could mess up a city's grain supply or anger a priest who thinks the gods are getting shortchanged. That's why Sir's so intense about your wedges. But there's a quirky tidbit some tablets from Nippur show: teachers making students rewrite the same sign hundreds of times, as punishment, like the world's worst handwriting drill. Imagine carving "I will not smudge my clay" until your fingers cramp. You're starting to think that's your future. You're halfway through your new tablet when Sir announces a recitation test. You have to stand and read your signs aloud perfectly. Your heart races. Public speaking's bad enough, but doing it in cuneiform brutal. You glance at your tablet, hoping your new wedges pass muster. But there's a nagging smudge in the corner. You try to scrape it away with your fingernail, but it's too late. Sir's calling names and yours is next. You stand knees wobbly and start reading. The sign for barley comes out fine, but sheep trips you up. Is it 2 wedges or 3? You guess. And the room goes quiet. Sir's face says it all. You're in trouble. Instead of a lecture, Sir hands you a fresh tablet and orders you to copy the entire list again twice. Your classmates groan in sympathy, but you know they're glad it's not them. You sit back down, stylus heavy in your hand, and start over. The clay's unforgiving, and your fingers are already sore. You wonder if this is how every day will feel. Endless tablets, endless corrections, endless fear of screwing up. A fly lands on your tablet, and you shoo it away, half expecting Sir to punish you for that too. You're starting to get why some kids dream of running off to be fishermen instead. The day drags on, and you're still at it carving wedges, while the sun climbs higher outside. You can hear the distant hum of the city merchants, haggling priests, chanting, but in here it's just you. The clay and Sir's watchful eyes. You're tempted to doodle a tiny sheep in the corner of your tablet just to break the monotony, but you resist. Last kid who tried that got a week of cleaning the school's water jars. You're not that brave or that stupid. Instead, you focus on keeping your lines straight, your wedges sharp. Maybe, just maybe, you'll get through this without another punishment. But deep down, you know the Ediba's got more in store. This is Sumer, after all, where learning means surviving, and Every mistake costs you something. You're still in the aduba, the air heavy, with the musty scent of clay and the faint buzz of flies that seem to love this place as much as you hate it. Your fingers ache from scratching cuneiform into yet another tablet, but today's different. Today you're learning the rules that keep this school running like a well-oiled chariot. Not the unspoken ones like don't smirk at Sir's beard, though you've learned that the hard way. These are the official codes, the ones carved into the very soul of Sumerian education. You're sitting cross-legged, stylus idle, as Sir paces reciting the Eduba's laws, like they're sacred hymns. Spoiler break 1, and you're not just in trouble, you're practically begging the gods for mercy. Sir's voice is low, almost hypnotic as he lists the rules. You must arrive before the sun crests the ziggurat. You must memorize every sign perfectly. You must respect the tablet, the stylus, the teacher, the gods. Disobedience isn't just a mistake. It's a betrayal of the city, the temple, the whole Sumerian way. You glance at your neighbor Gilgamesh Jr., who's doodling a tiny boat in the corner of his tablet. You nudge him to stop, he's asking for it, but he just winks. Kid's got a death wish. You're trying to listen, but the rules feel like a net closing around you. One mainstream fact stands out. Sumerian schools, especially in cities like Uruk, around 2500 BCE, were built to churn out scribes who could keep the bureaucracy humming. These codes weren't just school policy. They were law, sometimes even written into city records. Sir pauses, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk over a barley field. You, he says, pointing at you. Your heart skips. Did he see you nudge Gilgamesh Jr.? No, he's testing you. Recite the first rule he demands. You swallow throat dry as the desert outside. Arrive before the sun rises, you manage. He nods barely, but you're not off the hook. He adds, and the penalty for breaking it, you freeze. You weren't paying that close attention. The silence stretches, and your classmates shift uncomfortably. Finally, Sir answers for you. A day in the stocks. The room gasps, and you feel your face heat up. Stocks, like those wooden traps for criminals. Yep, you're starting to realize the Aduba's rules aren't just words. They're a gauntlet. Let's talk about these codes. They're not just about keeping order. They're about molding you into a scribe who doesn't flinch under pressure. You're expected to be perfect because a scribe's mistake could cost a merchant his livelihood or a temple its offerings. Historians still argue whether these rules were universal across Sumer or varied by city. Uruk might have been stricter than Nippur, for example. But one thing's clear, breaking them meant punishment, and not the right lines kind. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Shuruppak suggest students had to swear oaths to Nisaba, promising to uphold the Aduba's code. Imagine pledging your soul to a writing goddess just to avoid a beating. You're half tempted to try it, but you doubt Nisaba's taking bribes today. Sir moves on, reciting more rules. No talking out of turn, no sloppy tablets, no disrespecting elders. You're scribbling notes on a practice tablet, trying to keep up, but the clay's too wet and your wedges keep smudging. You glance at Gilgamesh Jr., who's now pretending to sleep head propped on his hand. You'd laugh, but you're too busy dreading the next rule. Failure to memorize texts earns a day without food. Your stomach growls just hearing it. You're already hungry. Breakfast was a flatbread and some watery beer, and the thought of skipping meals makes you clutch your tablet tighter. You joke to yourself that maybe starvation will make you lighter for running from Sir's wrath. Not that funny, but it keeps you sane. The rules keep coming, each one stricter than the last. No leaving the Aduba without permission. No damaging tablets even by accident. You're starting to see why scribes were so revered. They survive this nightmare. Sir stops pacing and points to a clay plaque on the wall, etched with cuneiform. This, he says, is your contract. Break it, and you answer to me, the gods and the city. You squint at the plaque, wishing you could read it better, but your cuneiform's still shaky. You're pretty sure it doesn't say, have fun and eat dates. More like, obey or suffer. You're tempted to whisper a joke about the plaque looking like a menu for misery, but Sir's too close and you're not that brave. The day wears on and you're still processing the rules. They're not just about control, they're about fear. Fear of failing the city, the gods, your family. You think about your parents who paid good silver to get you into this school. They're counting on you to become a scribe, maybe even work in the palace someday. But right now, you're just trying to survive the next hour. Gilgamesh Jr. finally gets caught, Sir, spots his doodled boat and makes him stand in the corner holding 2 tablets this time. You almost feel bad, but then you remember his smirk from yesterday. Karma's a harsh teacher too. As Sir drones on, you notice a kid across the room rubbing his hands, probably still sore from yesterday's stylus drill. You're all in this together, but it doesn't feel like camaraderie. It's more like shared dread. The aduba's a pressure cooker, and the rules are the heat. You're starting to understand why some boys run away, choosing a life of herding or fishing over this. But you're here, stylus in hand, rules burned into your brain. You glance at the altar to Nisaba, wondering if she's watching. Maybe she's got a soft spot for struggling students. Or maybe she's just enjoying the show. Either way, you're stuck, and the aduba's code is your new reality. Break it, and you'll wish you were back dodging donkeys in the market. You're back in the aduba, the air still thick with the smell of clay and the tension of a dozen boys trying not to mess up. Your tablet's in front of you, its surface smoothed from yesterday's disaster, but your fingers are sweaty, and the stylus feels like it's plotting against you. Today's lesson is about numbers, cuneiform signs for counting sheep barley, anything the temple or king cares about. You're trying to focus, but the memory of Sir's glare and those strict school rules from last time lingers like a bad dream. You're on edge because you know one wrong move could land you in serious trouble. And today, that trouble comes with a sting. The whip of the overseer is no myth. It's real, and you're about to see it up close. Sir's not alone today. There's an overseer, a grim-faced man with a shaved head and a reed whip tucked into his belt standing by the door. His job, making sure you and your classmates don't slack off. You've heard whispers about the whip, how it's not just for show, but a tool to correct wayward students. You glance at Gilgamesh Jr., who's unusually quiet, his usual smirk replaced by a nervous twitch. Even he knows today's not the day to test anyone. You're all on notice, one mistake, and the overseer steps in. A mainstream fact backs this up, tablets from Nippur, dated around 2600 BCE, describe physical punishment as standard in Sumerian schools, meant to instill discipline in future scribes. You're halfway through carving the sign for 10 sheep when you slip, dragging the stylus too deep. The wedge collapses into a muddy gash. You freeze, hoping Sir's busy, but he's right behind you. Careless, he snaps, and before you can mumble an excuse, he nods to the overseer. Your heart sinks as the man steps forward, whip in hand. It's not a leather lash, like you might imagine, more like a thin, flexible reed, but you've heard it stings like a scorpion. The overseer points to the front of the room, and you trudge forward, every eye on you. 5 strikes, Sir says like he's ordering bread. You want to protest, but the rules you learned yesterday scream in your head. Disobedience makes it worse. You stand palm sweating as the overseer raises the whip. The first strike lands on your back, a sharp burn that makes you bite your lip to keep from yelping. The second and third come fast, each one a fiery line across your shoulders. By the fourth, you're clenching your fist so hard your nails dig into your palms. The fifth feels like it's splitting your skin, though it doesn't. Sumerians are careful not to maim their future scribes, just to hurt them enough to remember. You stumble back to your seat, face burning with shame more than pain. Your classmates avoid your eyes, except Gilgamesh Jr., who mouths, "Ouch." You'd laugh if you weren't trying not to cry. Joke's on you for thinking you'd get through today unscathed. The whip's not just about pain, it's a message. Screw up and the Aduba fights back. Historians still argue whether these punishments were about control or building resilience. Some say scribes needed tough skin for the high-stakes world of temple and palace work. Others think it was just adults being harsh, because that's how Sumer rolled. Either way, you're feeling it now. A quirky tidbit, some tablets hint at overseers keeping tallies of who got whipped like a grim leaderboard. You wonder if your name's on it yet, and if Sir gets a bonus for every kid he corrects. You almost snort at the thought, but the sting in your back keeps you quiet. You try to focus on your tablet again, but every move hurts, and the clay seems to mock you. You're careful now, pressing lightly, checking each wedge twice. The overseer's still there, pacing like a lion, waiting for its next meal. You glance at the altar to Nisaba, wondering if she's taking notes. Maybe she's got a whip of her own up there. The thought makes you smirk, but you hide it quick. Smirking's probably a whipping offense too. You're starting to see why scribes were so meticulous. Nothing teaches precision like a reed to the back. The lesson drags on, and you're counting sheep signs in your head, trying to stay invisible. But then another kid, a quiet one, who never talks, misreads a sign during recitation. Sir doesn't even blink, just nods to the overseer. The poor kid gets 3 strikes, and you wince with every snap. It's not just the pain, it's the humiliation, the whole class watching like it's a public execution. You're starting to hate this place, but you're also starting to get it. The whip's not just punishment, it's a reminder that being a scribe means carrying the weight of Sumer's order on your shoulders. One bad wedge, and you're not just failing, you're letting down the city. By the time the sun's high, your back's still sore, but you're back to carving. You're extra careful now, double-checking every sign. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over and whispers, "Bet you'll dream of whips tonight." You roll your eyes, but can't help a small grin. He's not wrong. You're already dreading tomorrow, wondering what fresh misery the Idubas got in store. Maybe you'll get lucky and just have to hold a tablet over your head again. Or maybe you'll end up like that kid in the corner who's now rubbing his back and looking like he regrets ever signing up for this. One thing's for sure, in the Aduba, survival means perfection, and you're learning that the hard way. You're back in the Aduba, the familiar scent of clay and sweat wrapping around you like a too tight cloak. Your back still stings from yesterday's run-in with the overseer's whip, a sharp reminder to keep your wedges crisp. Today you're hunched over a tablet, copying a hymn to Nisaba, the writing goddess, who's starting to feel more like your personal tormentor than a divine protector. The room's buzzing with the soft scratches of styluses, but there's an undercurrent of dread. Everyone's waiting for the next kid to screw up. You're trying to keep your head down, but trouble's got a way of finding you here. Today it's not just about bad cuneiform. It's about public shaming, the kind that makes you wish you could melt into the dirt floor. You're mid-verse, carving a tricky sign for praise when your stylus slips, leaving a wobbly wedge that looks more like a squashed bug than a sacred word. You glance up, hoping Sir's distracted, but he's right there, his beard practically bristling with disapproval. Up he says, voice flat but heavy like a stone dropping into a well. You stand, tablet in hand, heart pounding. He doesn't just correct you, he holds your tablet high, showing it to the class. This, he announces, is what failure looks like. Your face burns as the other boys snicker, their eyes glinting with that mix of relief and glee that comes from someone else taking the heat. Public shaming's a staple here. Historians note that Sumerian teachers in cities like Ur, around 2500 BCE, used it to enforce discipline, making examples of kids to keep the rest in line. Sir hands your tablet back and orders you to the front. You're not getting whipped this time, small mercy, but you've got to read your botched hymn aloud, every mistake on display. You stumble through the signs, your voice cracking as you misread praise's grain. The class erupts in laughter, and even Gilgamesh Jr., who's usually got your back, can't hide his grin. You want to snap that his own tablet looks like a donkey stepped on it, but you bite your tongue. Sir's not done. Tell your peers why you failed, he says. You mutter something about a slippery stylus, and the room laughs again. You're starting to think Nisaba's got a personal grudge against you. Joke's on you, though. Humiliation's the point, and it's working. This isn't just about embarrassment, it's about control. The Aduba's a machine churning out scribes who can't afford to mess up because one wrong sign could mean a merchant loses his grain or a priest insults a god. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Nippur suggest students had to write self-criticisms on their tablets as punishment, like, I am careless in perfect cuneiform over and over. You're half expecting Sir to make you do that next. Historians still argue whether shaming was meant to build character or just break spirits. Some say it toughened kids for the high-pressure scribe life, others think it was just cruel. Either way, you're feeling it standing there as your classmates' laughter echoes like a swarm of flies. You slink back to your seat, vowing to never mess up again, but the clay's unforgiving and your hands are shaky from the ordeal. You try to focus, but every snicker from the room feels like a jab. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, At least you didn't cry. You shoot him a look, partly grateful, partly wishing you could accidentally smudge his tablet. You're tempted to joke that the only thing worse than this is cleaning the latrine pit, but you keep it to yourself. Sir's still watching, and you're not about to give him another excuse to parade you around. The lesson continues, and you're back to carving extra careful now. The hymn's long, and every sign feels like a trap. You glance at the kid next to you, who's sweating over his own tablet, probably dreading the same fate. You're all in this together, but it's every scribe for himself. The room's quiet again, save for the scratch of styluses and the occasional cough. You notice a small crack in your tablet. Great, another chance to screw up. You smooth it over, praying Sir doesn't notice. The last thing you need is another round of public mockery. You're starting to understand why some boys dream of escaping to the fields or the river, anywhere but here. As the day drags on, another kid gets called out. He miswrote a sign for temple, and Sir makes him stand on one leg while reciting the correct form 10 times. The class giggles, but you don't join in. You know how it feels. You're still stinging from your own turn in the spotlight, and the memory of those laughs is burned into you. You wonder if this is what being a scribe is really about, surviving the Aduba's gauntlet, one humiliation at a time. You glance at Nisaba's altar, her clay figurine staring blankly. Maybe she's keeping score, or maybe she's just tired of watching kids like you fumble. Either way, you're stuck, and the Aduba's got more ways to make you squirm. You just hope tomorrow's punishment is something you can handle without losing what's left of your dignity. You're back in the Aduba, the air thick with the usual mix of clay dust and nervous tension. Your back's still tender from the whip a few days ago, and the sting of yesterday's public shaming lingers like a bad aftertaste. Today you're hunched over a tablet trying to memorize a list of cuneiform signs for trade goods. Fish, wool, copper. The words blur together and your stomach's growling louder than a temple drum. You skipped breakfast thinking you'd grab some dates on the way, but a late start meant no time for food. Big mistake. In the Aduba, hunger isn't just a feeling, it's a punishment, and you're about to learn how it's weaponized. You're struggling to focus, and Sir, with his beard like a storm cloud, is watching you like he knows you're slipping. The lesson's brutal: memorize 20 signs by midday or face the consequences. You're only halfway through, and the sun's already high, judging by the light sneaking through the doorway. You try to recall the sign for wool, but your mind's foggy, and all you can think about is the flatbread you didn't eat. Sir calls your name, and you stand heart sinking. Recite, he says, arms crossed. You stammer through the first few signs: fish good. Copper shaky, but when you get to wool, you blank. The room's silent, and Sir's eyes narrow. No meal until you get it right, he says. Your stomach twists, and you realize he's not talking about missing lunch. This is starvation as discipline, a real tactic in Sumerian schools. Tablets from Ur around 2600 BCE confirm teachers withheld food to motivate students, especially for failing memory tasks. You sit back down, head spinning, and try to focus. No food until you nail this list. That's not just harsh, it's torture. Your classmates are quiet, some sneaking sympathetic glances, but nobody's offering to share their bread. Gilgamesh Jr., usually quick with a quip, just shakes his head like he's been there. You're tempted to whisper a joke about trading your stylus for a loaf, but the hunger's making you sluggish, and Sir's not in the mood for chatter. You stare at your tablet, the signs swimming like fish in the Euphrates. You're starting to see why scribes were so sharp. Nothing teaches you to memorize faster than an empty stomach. Let's talk about this punishment. Starvation wasn't just about making you suffer. It was about control. A scribe who can't remember signs could botch a tax record or a temple offering, and that's a disaster in Sumer. A quirky tidbit: some tablets hint at teachers making kids recite while holding empty bowls, a cruel reminder of what they're missing. Historians still argue whether this was a standard penalty or reserved for repeat offenders. Some say it was to toughen kids, others think it was just mean. Either way, you're feeling it now. Your hands shake as you carve the sign for wool again, trying to burn it into your brain. You're not just hungry, you're desperate to prove you're not a failure. The day drags on, and you're still at it, reciting under your breath, while your stomach protests. Sir's pacing, checking tablets, and you're praying he doesn't call you up again. Another kid, a skinny boy with nervous eyes, fumbles his list and gets the same punishment: no food until he's perfect. You catch his eye, and there's a moment of shared misery. You're all in this pressure cooker where every mistake costs you something, whether it's pride, pain, or now your lunch. You try to focus, but the hunger's a fog clouding everything. You wonder if Nisaba, that goddess on her altar, ever went hungry. Probably not, she's got divine dates on tap. You're halfway through another recitation when Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Bet you'd eat clay right now." You almost laugh, but it hurts to move. He's not wrong, though. You're eyeing the tablet like it might turn into bread. You manage a weak grin and whisper back, "Only if it's baked." It's a small rebellion, but it keeps you going. You're starting to get why some kids sneak food into the Aduba, hiding dates in their tunics. You're tempted to try it tomorrow, but getting caught could mean worse, like cleaning the latrine pit. No thanks. By late afternoon, you're dizzy, but you've got the list down. You stand, recite it perfectly, and Sir nods, tossing you a small barley cake. It's dry, crumbly, but it tastes like victory. You wolf it down, ignoring the grit between your teeth. The other kids are still working, some clutching their stomachs, and you feel a pang of guilt for eating while they're not. But you're also relieved you survived this round. The Aduba's teaching you more than cuneiform. It's teaching you to fight for every scrap, whether it's food respect or a chance to be a scribe. You glance at Nisaba's altar, wondering if she's impressed. Probably not, but you're still here, and that's something. Section 7. You're back in the Aduba, the air heavy with the familiar mix of clay dust and dread. Your stomach still grumbling from yesterday's hunger punishment. The reed stylus in your hand feels like an old friend, but one that betrays you every chance it gets. Today's task is copying a legal contract, tedious stuff about land boundaries and barley debts, but you're on high alert. The memory of the whip, the shaming, and the empty stomach has you double checking every wedge. Sir's pacing as usual, his beard swaying like a palm in a storm, but it's the reed rod in his hand that's got your attention. It's not the overseer's whip. This is smaller, thinner, but you've heard it stings like a wasp, and today you're about to feel it for yourself. You're halfway through the contract carving the sign for land when your stylus slips, leaving a jagged wedge that looks more like a lightning bolt than a legal term. You try to smooth it over, but Sir's shadow falls across your tablet. Careless again, he says, voice low, but sharp enough to cut through the room's silence. He doesn't raise the rod yet, just taps it against his palm, a warning that makes your skin prickle. You mumble an apology, but he's not having it. Stand, he orders. You rise, legs shaky, and he points to the front. The other boys watch, some with pity, others with that grim relief that it's not them. A mainstream fact, physical discipline, like rod strikes, was common in Sumerian schools around 2500 BCE, as tablets from Nippur show meant to sharpen focus for future scribes. Sir hands you a new tablet and says 5 strikes for disrespecting the craft. Your heart sinks. 5. You're no stranger to pain after the whip, but this feels personal, like you've insulted Nisaba herself. He raises the rod, a slender reed that looks harmless but isn't. The first strike lands on your knuckles, a quick burning snap that makes you flinch. The second and third hit your palm, each one a sharp sting that radiates up your arm. By the fourth, you're gritting your teeth, and the fifth leaves your hand throbbing like it's been stung by a whole hive. You flex your fingers, trying not to wince, and shuffle back to your seat. Gilgamesh Jr. whispers, "At least it wasn't your face." You shoot him a look, half grateful, half wishing you could accidentally flick clay at him. Joke's on you, though. Your hand's too sore to try. The rod's not just about pain, it's a lesson in precision. Scribes can't afford mistakes when they're recording laws or taxes. One bad wedge could mean a farmer loses his field, or a merchant his silver. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Ur suggest teachers use different rods for different offenses, thicker ones for laziness, thinner for sloppy writing. Historians still argue whether this was systematic or just depended on the teacher's mood. Some say it was a structured code. Others think it was whatever reed was handy. Either way, your stinging hand tells you Sir's not improvising. You glance at Nisaba's altar, wondering if she's keeping a tally of your suffering. Maybe she's got a soft spot for sore-handed kids, but you doubt it. You try to get back to work, but every press of the stylus sends a jolt through your palm. The contract's still there, mocking you with its endless signs. You're extra careful now, carving each wedge like it's a prayer. The room's quiet, save for the scratch of styluses and the occasional cough. Another kid gets called up for a smudged tablet and takes 3 strikes. You wince with him, your own hand still throbbing. You're starting to see the pattern. The Adaba's a gauntlet, and every day's a test of endurance. You wonder if this is what being a scribe is really about, surviving the rod to earn a seat in the palace someday. Or maybe it's just about breaking you down until you're too tired to mess up. The day drags on, and you're still carving, your hand aching but functional. You catch Gilgamesh Jr. sneaking a glance at your tablet, probably checking if you're still botching it. You're tempted to whisper a joke about the rod being Sir's favorite pet, but you hold back, your knuckles can't take another round. Instead, you focus on the contract, trying to ignore the pain and the fear of screwing up again. The sun's high now, its heat creeping into the room, and you're sweating through your tunic. You glance at the kid next to you who's rubbing his own hand, probably from an earlier run-in with the rod. You're all in this together, but it feels like every boy for himself. By late afternoon, you finish the contract, and Sir gives a grudging nod. No praise, just a "Redowit cleaner tomorrow." You're too tired to care, you're just glad to avoid another strike. You flex your hand, still stinging, and wonder how many more rods you'll face before you're a scribe. The Aduba's teaching you more than cuneiform. It's teaching you to grit your teeth and keep going no matter how much it hurts. You glance at Nasaba's figurine, her blank eyes staring back. Maybe she's rooting for you, or maybe she's just watching the show. Either way, you're still here, hand throbbing, ready for whatever the Aduba throws at you next. You're back in the Aduba, the familiar smell of damp clay and nervous sweat clinging to the air like a stubborn fog. Your hands still sore from the reed rod sting, and you're moving slow, careful not to draw Sir's attention. Today's task is copying a list of temple offerings. Oil, dates, sheep, and every wedge has to be perfect. You're on edge not just from the usual fear of messing up, but because you were late this morning. The sun was already peeking over the ziggurat when you slipped through the door, panting from dodging carts in the market. Sir noticed, of course, his eyes missed nothing, and now you're waiting for the hammer to fall. Spoiler, it's not a metaphor. You're about to meet the stocks, a punishment that makes the whip and rod seem like warm-ups. You're mid-sign carving oil with a shaky stylus when Sir calls your name. Your stomach drops. You think the gods wait for tardy scribes, he says, voice cold as the Euphrates in winter. He points to a corner where a wooden contraption sits, two rough planks, with holes for wrists and ankles. The stocks. You've heard about them, but seeing them up close makes your throat go dry. They're not just for criminals in the market square. Sumerian schools use them to lock kids in place, forcing them to reflect on their sins. Tablets from Nippur, around 2600 BCE, confirmed this was a go-to punishment for tardiness or defiance, a way to teach scribes the value of time in a society obsessed with order. You trudge to the stocks, the class watching in that awful silence you're starting to hate. Sir opens the planks and you slide your wrists into the holes, the wood rough against your skin. The top plank clamps shut, trapping you in a half crouch that's already making your back ache. 1 hour, Sir says, and you're left there staring at the dirt floor while your classmates scratch away at their tablets. Your neck cramps, your wrists chafe, and the humiliation burns worse than the rod ever did. Gilgamesh Jr. passes by to grab a new tablet and mutters, "Bet you'll set a new record for speed tomorrow." You'd glare, but your neck's too stiff. Joke's on you, being late was a dumb move, and now you're paying for it. The stocks aren't just about discomfort. They're a public lesson. Everyone sees you stuck like a thief caught stealing dates, and it's meant to drill in the importance of punctuality. Scribes don't just write. They keep Sumer's wheels turning, taxes trade. Temple rituals all depend on timing. A quirky tidbit, some tablets hint at students being made to recite school rules, while in the stocks turning pain into a memory aid. Historians still argue whether this was to humiliate or to teach. Some say it built discipline. Others think it was just cruelty dressed up as education. Either way, your shoulders are screaming, and you're starting to think fishing boats look pretty good right now. The hour drags like a donkey cart through mud. You try to shift your weight, but the stocks don't budge, and the wood digs into your wrists. You catch snippets of the lesson, something about measuring oil in silla units, but it's hard to care when your legs are numb. A fly lands on your nose and you can't swat it away. You're tempted to yell at it, but that'd probably earn you another hour. Instead, you focus on the altar to Nisaba, her clay figurine staring blankly. You wonder if she's laughing at you or just bored. Maybe she's got her own divine stocks for gods who show up late to meetings. Another kid gets sent to the corner for a smudged tablet, and you feel a grim solidarity. You're all trapped in this Iduba gauntlet where every mistake costs you something, pride, pain, or now your freedom. You're starting to see why scribes were so meticulous. Nothing says be on time like an hour locked in wood. Your mind wanders to your parents, who probably think you're learning to be a palace scribe, not sweating in a medieval torture device. You'd laugh at the irony, but your back's too sore. Instead, you whisper to yourself, next time run faster. It's not much, but it keeps you sane. Finally, Sir releases you, the planks creaking as they open. You stumble back to your seat, wrists red and legs wobbly. The class pretends not to notice, but you catch Gilgamesh Jr.'s smirk. Nice pose, he whispers. You roll your eyes, too tired to snap back, but you're already plotting to beat him to the door tomorrow. You pick up your stylus, ignoring the ache in your wrists, and get back to work. The temple offering list isn't going to write itself, and you're not about to give Sir another excuse to lock you up. The Aduba's teaching you more than cuneiform. It's teaching you to survive one painful lesson at a time. You just hope the next one doesn't involve more carpentry. You're back in the Aduba, the air thick with the usual clay dust haze, and the low hum of boys scratching at tablets. Your wrists still ache from yesterday's hour in the stocks, and you're moving like a donkey with a bad limp, careful not to draw Sir's eye. Today's task is copying a map of irrigation canals, lines, and wedges that have to be exact or some farmer's field goes dry. You're trying to focus, but the memory of the stalks, the whip, and that empty stomach keeps you on edge. You're late with your tablet, and the clay's too wet sticking to your stylus like it's got a grudge. Then it happens, you smudge a canal line, turning it into a muddy blob. Sir's on you in a heartbeat, his beard practically crackling with irritation. Today's punishment. The mud pit, a penalty so bizarre, it sounds made up, but trust me, it's real. Sir grabs your tablet, holds it up, and says, "This is an insult to the fields." The class snickers, but you're too busy dreading what's next. He points to the door where the overseer's waiting with a smirk that says he's seen this show before. You're led outside to a shallow pit near the school filled with sticky, foul-smelling mud from the nearby canals. Cleanse your carelessness, Sir says, and you're told to wade in and scrub irrigation tools, shovels, hose, until they shine. You step in the mud, sucking at your sandals, cold and slimy, up to your shins. A mainstream fact. Sumerian schools, especially in Uruk, around 2500 BCE, used labor-based punishments like this to teach respect for the land, since scribes often managed irrigation records critical to the city's survival. You're sloshing through the pit, scraping mud off a rusty hoe, while the overseer watches Reed whip in hand. The mud smells like rotten reeds, and something worse, maybe a dead fish or two. Your tunic soaked, clinging to your legs, and every move feels like wrestling a river monster. The other boys peek out the doorway, giggling until Sir barks at them to get back to work. Gilgamesh Jr. shouts, "Looking good, Canal King." You'd flip him off, but your hands are caked in muck, and you're pretty sure that's another offense. Joke's on you, this pit's your home for the next hour, and it's teaching you to hate clay in a whole new way. The mud pit's not just gross. It's a lesson in humility. Scribes don't just write about canals, they're part of the system that keeps Sumer fed. Mess up a record and a field floods or starves. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Nippur suggest students were sometimes made to dig actual canals as punishment, linking their labor directly to the city's lifeblood. Historians still argue whether the mud pit was a common penalty or a creative twist by sadistic teachers. Some say it was practical, others think it was just another way to break kids down. Either way, you're knee deep in it scrubbing tools, while your arms burn and your nose begs for mercy. You try to focus, but the mud's relentless, seeping into every crack of your skin. A fly lands on your arm, and you swat it away only to smear more muck on yourself. You're tempted to mutter a curse at Nisaba, but you glance at the overseer and think better of it. His whip hasn't moved, but you're not testing him. You wonder if this is what your parents imagined when they paid for your education, their son, the future palace scribe smelling like a swamp. You'd laugh, but the mud's in your mouth now, gritty and bitter. You spit it out, hoping no one saw. Spoiler, they did. The overseer grunts, and you're pretty sure he's adding disrespecting the pit to your list of sins. Another kid gets sent out, probably for a smudged tablet too. He sloshes in beside you, looking as miserable as you feel. You exchange a glance, shared suffering, but no words. You're too tired and the mud's too heavy. You're starting to get why scribes are so meticulous. Nothing says get it right like an hour in a stinking pit. You scrape harder, hoping to finish early, but the tools are endless, and the mud's like a living thing clinging to everything. You catch a glimpse of the Aduba's doorway where Sir's silhouette looms. He's probably enjoying this, sipping watered beer while you drown in sludge. By the time you're released, your legs are numb and your tunic's a lost cause. You stumble back to the Aduba, trailing mud like a defeated warrior. Gilgamesh Jr. whispers, "You smell like a canal's armpit." You manage a weak grin and mutter, "At least I'm cleaner than your tablet." It's a small victory, but it keeps you going. You sit back down, grab a new tablet, and start carving again, ignoring the ache in your arms and the stink in your nose. The Aduba's a battlefield, and the mud pit's just one more scar. You glance at Nisaba's altar, wondering if she's impressed by your survival. Probably not, but you're still here ready for whatever this place throws at you next. You're back in the Aduba, the air heavy with clay dust, and the nervous hum of boys scratching at tablets. Your tunic's still stiff from yesterday's mud pit adventure, and you're moving gingerly, trying not to smell like a canal gone bad. Today's task is recitation, standing in front of the class, reading a tablet of Sumerian proverbs aloud, every wedge perfect. Your palms are sweaty, and the stylus you're clutching feels like it's plotting your downfall. You've memorized the proverbs, or so you think, but the Aduba's got a way of making you doubt everything. The pressure's on because messing up here doesn't just mean a redo, it means facing the class's judgment, and Sir's got a knack for turning mistakes into public spectacles. You're about to learn just how brutal reciting under pressure can be. You're halfway through the list, waiting your turn when Sir calls your name. Your stomach lurches, you're not ready, but there's no escape. You stand tablet in hand and start reading. A lazy hand starves the house. Your voice shakes, but you nail the first few signs. Then comes a tricky one. A tongue that wags brings ruin, and you stumble mixing up two wedges. The room goes quiet, and Sir's beard twitches like it's personally offended. Again, he says, but this time you're to recite while standing on one leg, the class watching like vultures. A mainstream fact, Sumerian schools, especially in Ur, around 2500 BCE, used public recitation as a test of memory and nerve critical for scribes, who'd later dictate laws or contracts. Flub it and you're not just wrong, you're a walking embarrassment. You start over balancing on one leg, your calf burning as you try to focus. The proverb comes out garbled and the class snickers. Gilgamesh Jr., that smug kid with the boat doodle habit, mutters, Nice dance moves. You'd glare, but you're too busy trying not to fall. Your second try's worse, you skip a whole line and Sir stops you cold. Recite it 10 times facing the class, he says. You turn cheeks burning and start again, the words tripping over each other. The boy's laughter stings worse than the rod, and you're starting to hate proverbs with a passion. You're tempted to joke that the only ruin here is your dignity, but you keep it together barely. The pressure's crushing, and you're learning fast that recitation's a performance and you're bombing. This isn't just about memory, it's about proving you can handle the spotlight. Scribes often read aloud in temples or courts, so choking now could mean you're not cut out for the big leagues. A quirky tidbit: some tablets from Nippur hint at students being forced to recite while holding heavy clay tablets, adding physical strain to the mental game. Historians still argue whether this was to build endurance or just to make kids squirm. Some say it mimicked real scribe duties, others think it was pure sadism. Either way, you're wobbling on one leg, reciting like your life depends on it, and it kind of does. A bad scribe's no scribe at all, and you're not ready to trade this for a fisherman's net. You're on your 5th recitation when your leg gives out, and you stumble, catching yourself on a bench. The class laughs harder, and even Sir cracks a rare grim smile. Again he says, and you're back at it, voice hoarse, leg trembling. You're starting to see why some kids whisper about running away. Facing a river crocodile sounds better than this. You glance at Nisaba's altar, her clay figurine staring blankly, and wonder if she's enjoying your misery. Maybe she's testing you, or maybe she's just sipping divine beer while you sweat. You push through, finally nailing the proverb on the 10th try. Sir nods barely, and you collapse onto your seat legs like jelly. Another kid's up next, and he's worse, stuttering through a proverb about honesty, while the class jeers. Sir makes him recite with a clay tablet balanced on his head. You'd feel bad, but you're too tired, and a small part of you's glad it's not you this time. You're starting to get the Aduba's rhythm. Every day's a new way to fail, and every failure's a show. You pick up your stylus, ready to copy the next proverb, but your hands are shaky from the ordeal. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Bet you'll dream of proverbs tonight." You mutter back, "Only if they're about revenge." It's a weak joke, but it keeps you sane. The day drags on, and you're still reciting in your head, trying to lock in the signs. The pressure's relentless, and you're starting to understand why scribes were so sharp they had to be, or they'd drown in this place. You glance at the doorway where the sun's climbing, and wonder how many more recitations you'll survive before you're free. The Aduba's a crucible, forging scribes through fear and failure. You're not sure if you're getting tougher or just more desperate, but you're still here, stylus in hand, ready for the next round. Nisaba's watching, and you're determined to give her something to cheer for, or at least not laugh at. Section 11. You're back in the Aduba, the air thick with the usual clay dust haze and the nervous scratches of styluses on tablets. Your legs still ache from yesterday's one-legged recitation fiasco, and you're gripping your stylus like it's your last defense against Sir's wrath. Today's task is copying a list of animal names: goat, ox, donkey, in cuneiform, but you're on edge, expecting another trap. The memory of the whip, the stalks, and that mud pit lingers like a bad smell. But today's punishment takes a turn for the bizarre. You're about to face animal-based oddities, penalties so weird they sound like something your little brother made up to prank you. But in Sumer, they're real, and you're about to get a front row seat to the strangest discipline yet. You're halfway through carving donkey when your wedge goes wonky, turning the sign into something closer to squashed reed. Sir's there in a flash, his beard practically vibrating with disappointment. You mock the beasts that feed us, he says, voice low but sharp. You start to mumble an excuse, but he cuts you off. Outside, he orders, and your heart sinks. You follow him to the courtyard, where a small crowd of students gathers sensing a show. Instead of the whip or stocks, you see a donkey tethered to a post, looking as unimpressed as you feel. Sir hands you a basket of reeds and says, "Carry these on your back beside the beast until the sun shifts." You're to walk in circles mimicking the donkey's labor while the class watches. A mainstream fact: Sumerian schools, especially in Nippur, around 2600 BCE, used symbolic punishments tied to animals to teach respect for the labor and resources scribes recorded. You sling the basket over your shoulders, the reeds heavy and scratching through your tunic. The donkey brays and you swear it's laughing at you. You start walking the courtyard, dust kicking up under your sandals while your classmates snicker. Gilgamesh Jr., never one to miss a jab, calls out, "You're practically twins." You'd snap back, but the basket's digging into your back, and the donkey's stench is making your eyes water. This isn't just humiliating, it's exhausting, and the sun's barely moved. You're starting to see why scribes were so careful. Nothing says respect the donkey like hauling its load for hours. A quirky tidbit: some tablets from hint at students being made to mimic animal sounds, as punishment, braying, or bleating to drive the lesson home. Historians still argue whether this was to teach humility or just to entertain teachers. Either way, you're glad you're not braying. Yet, the donkey plods beside you, chewing lazily, and you're tempted to ask it for tips on surviving this place. Your arms burn, your back aches, and the reeds keep slipping, forcing you to stop and adjust while Sir watches, arms crossed. The other boys go back to their tablets, but you catch their glances, a mix of pity and amusement. You're learning fast that the Aduba loves to make you feel ridiculous. First the mud pit, now this. You wonder if Nisaba up there on her divine perch is scribbling notes about your donkey impression. Maybe she's got a tablet titled "Kids Who Fail at Cuneiform." You'd laugh, but your throat's dry and the dust's choking you. Another kid gets pulled out for a smudged tablet and joins you carrying a sack of barley next to a different donkey. You exchange a look, shared misery, but no words. The courtyard's a circus now, and you're the main act. You're tempted to whisper a joke about starting a donkey union, but the overseer's nearby, his reed whip twitching like it's eager for action. You keep walking the basket, cutting into your shoulders, and try to focus on anything else, like how you'll never mess up donkey again. This punishment's not just about shame. It's about tying you to the animals. Sumer depends on the ones you'll track as a scribe. Mess up their records, and a farmer starves. You're getting it, but you wish the lesson didn't smell so bad. The sun creeps higher, and your legs are screaming, but you keep going. The donkey's unfazed, probably used to worse days than this. You're starting to envy its chill. Gilgamesh Jr. sneaks another jab as he passes to grab water. "Bet you'll name your first kid Donkey." You mutter back, "Only if it's got your face." It's a weak comeback, but it keeps you from losing it. By the time Sir calls you back, your back's raw and you're covered in dust and donkey hair. You stumble to your seat, vowing to carve every wedge like it's a royal decree. The Aduba's teaching you more than cuneiform. It's teaching you to survive the absurd, one hoof step at a time. You glance at Nisaba's altar, wondering if she's impressed by your endurance. Probably not, but you're still standing ready for whatever weirdness this place throws next. Section 12. You're back in the Aduba, the air thick with clay dust, and the low hum of boys scratching at tablets. Your shoulders still sore from hauling reeds like a donkey yesterday. The smell of that courtyard beast clings to your tunic, and you're moving slow, trying to blend into the background. Today's task is copying a hymn to Enlil, the wind god, with long, complex signs that make your head spin. You are gripping your stylus like it's a lifeline, but the memory of the whip, the stalks, and that muddy pit has you second guessing every wedge. Sir's pacing his beard, swaying like a storm cloud. But today, he's not just watching your tablets, he's watching your mind. The Aduba's not done with you yet. Now you're facing the scribe master's mind games, psychological tricks designed to break you down and build you into a scribe who never flinches. You're mid-hymn carving a sign for storm when Sir stops beside you. He doesn't speak, just stares at your tablet, then at you, his eyes boring into you like he's reading your soul. You freeze, stylus hovering, waiting for the usual sloppy, or a trip to the stocks. Instead, he says, "Why do you hesitate?" It's not a question, it's a trap. You mumble something about wanting to get it right, but he leans closer, voice low. "Doubt is a scribe's enemy," he says. "Finish it. Now." Your hand shakes and you carve the sign, but it's shaky off center. He doesn't punish you yet, but he walks away, leaving you paranoid, wondering what he's planning. A mainstream fact: Sumerian teachers, especially in Uruk, around 2500 BCE, used psychological pressure to train scribes for high-stakes roles, where hesitation could botch a temple record or royal decree. Sir's game doesn't stop there. He calls you up to recite the hymn, but halfway through he interrupts, asking you to explain why Enlil matters. You stammer, caught off guard, and the class snickers. Gilgamesh Jr., always ready with a jab, whispers, "Bet you forgot Enlil's favorite cloud." You'd laugh, but your mind's racing, trying to dodge Sir's trap. He's not testing your memory, he's testing your nerve. You manage a half-decent answer about Enlil's storms feeding the fields, and he nods, but his silence feels worse than a shout. You're back at your seat, heart pounding, wondering if you passed or just dug yourself deeper. A quirky tidbit: some tablets from Nippur suggest teachers would randomly switch tasks mid-lesson to keep students on edge, mimicking the chaos of real scribe work. Historians still argue whether this was to build mental toughness or just to keep kids scared. Either way, you're sweating it. The mind games keep coming. Sir starts asking random boys to stand and recite unrelated texts, laws, then poems, then numbers without warning. You're next, and he throws you a curveball. Recite a grain inventory from last week. You barely remember it, and every wrong word feels like a step toward the mud pit. You stumble through mixing up barley and wheat, and Sir just stares, letting the silence crush you. No rod, no stalks, just that look like you've disappointed Nisaba herself. You're starting to see why scribes were so sharp. These games force you to think fast, or crash hard. You sit, pulse racing, and try to focus on the hymn, but your mind's a mess, second-guessing every move. The day drags on, and Sir's tricks get weirder. He pairs you with another kid for a trust exercise. You dictate signs while he carves, then switch. Sounds simple, but he's slow, and you're panicking, knowing Sir's watching. When you mess up a sign, Sir doesn't punish you directly. He makes you both redo the tablet, silently pitting you against each other. Your partner glares, and you mutter, "Sorry, not my fault, Sir's a mind witch." It's a weak joke, but it eases the tension. The class is tense, everyone waiting for Sir's next move. Another boy gets called out, forced to recite backward, while Sir taps his rod, rhythmically throwing him off. You're starting to think Sir's enjoying this too much. You glance at Nisaba's altar, her clay figurine staring blankly, and wonder if she's behind these head games. Maybe she's testing your sanity, seeing if you're scribe material, or just another kid who'll crack. You're tempted to whisper a plea for mercy, but you focus instead, carving each wedge like it's your last. The aduba's teaching you more than cuneiform. It's teaching you to outthink the traps to stay cool when Sir's playing chess with your brain. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Bet he dreams up these games over beer." You smirk and mutter back, "Hope he chokes on it." It's a small rebellion, but it keeps you grounded. You're still here dodging Sir's mind games, ready for whatever twisted lesson comes next. You're back in the aduba, the air heavy with clay dust, and the nervous hum of boys scratching at tablets, your mind still reeling from Sir's psychological traps yesterday. Your fingers are cramped from carving hymns, and you're moving slow, trying to avoid another round of mind games. Today's task is copying a contract for a barley loan dry stuff, but one wrong wedge could mean a merchant's ruin, so you're triple checking every sign. The memory of the donkey haul the mud pit, and that one-legged recitation keeps you sharp, but there's a new weight in the room. You're about to learn that punishments in the aduba aren't just Sirs call your parents are in on it too, backing the teacher's brutal methods like it's a sacred pact. You're mid-contract carving the sign for debt when Sir stops by your tablet. He squints, nods, and moves on, no punishment, thank Nisaba. But then he announces a surprise, a parent visit. Your stomach twists. You'd rather face the stocks than your father's disappointed stare. He shows up tunic crisp, looking like he's ready to haggle with a king. Sir hands him your latest tablet, and you brace for the worst. Adequate, your father says, but his tone says you're one smudge away from disgracing the family. Then he adds, if he falters, do what's needed. You blink, stunned. He's giving Sir a blank check to punish you. A mainstream fact, Sumerian parents, especially in cities like Uruk, around 2500 BCE, often endorsed harsh school discipline, seeing it as a path to secure their sons' futures as scribes in temples or palaces. Sir nods like this is normal, and you realize it is. Parents here don't just trust the aduba, they demand it be tough. You're not just learning cuneiform, you're carrying your family's hopes, and they're fine with you suffering to get there. You glance at Gilgamesh Jr., who's suddenly very focused on his tablet, probably dreading his own parents' visit. You're tempted to whisper a joke about trading dads for a nicer donkey, but Sir's watching and you're not risking it. Instead, you carve harder, hoping to impress your father before he leaves. But then another kid, a nervous boy with shaky hands, smudges his tablet, and Sir calls his mother in. She doesn't hesitate. Make him learn, she says, and Sir assigns him an hour in the stocks. You wince, remembering your own time trapped in wood. This parental pact hits hard. It's not just Sir or the overseer, it's your own family signing off on the pain. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Nippur suggest parents occasionally sat in on punishments, watching their kids take the rod or go hungry to ensure they learned. Historians still argue whether this was about tough love or social pressure. Some say parents wanted elite scribes for status. Others think they feared weak sons would shame them. Either way, you're feeling the weight as your father lingers, eyeing your tablet like it's a verdict on his parenting. You're extra careful now, each wedge a plea to keep him off your back. But your hand slips just a little, and Sir's there pointing it out. Your father frowns, and you know you're in for it later, maybe not the whip, but a lecture that'll sting just as bad. The day drags on, and more parents trickle in, each one nodding at Sir's methods like they're inspecting a temple offering. Another kid gets caught whispering and is sent to carry reeds, his father watching with a grim nod. You're starting to see why the aduba is so brutal. Everyone's in on it, from Nisaba to your neighbors. You glance at the goddess's altar, her clay figurine staring blankly, and wonder if she's got to deal with parents too. Maybe she's the one whispering, hit him harder. You'd laugh, but your father's still here, and you're not about to test his patience. Instead, you focus on the contract carving debt like it's your last act on Earth. By afternoon, your father leaves, but not before reminding you to honor the family. You're exhausted, not from the tablet, but from the pressure of his expectations. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Bet your dad's scarier than Sir." You mutter back, "At least Sir doesn't lecture me at dinner." It's a weak joke, but it keeps you grounded. You're starting to get why scribes were so disciplined. Between teachers and parents, there's no room for mistakes. You glance at the other boys, all hunched over their tablets, probably feeling their own parents' eyes on them, even if they're not here. The aduba's a pressure cooker, and the parental pact just turned up the heat. You're still carving, still surviving, but you're wondering how many more family endorsements you can take before you crack. You're back in the aduba, the air thick with the familiar clay dust haze and the tense scratch of styluses on tablets. Your shoulders are still stiff from hauling reeds, your mind raw from Sir's head games, and the sting of your father's approval of the aduba's harsh methods lingers like a bruise. Today's task is copying a list of Sumerian rules, about grain theft and broken contracts, each sign a test of your precision. You're trying to keep your wedges sharp, but the weight of the past week's whip stocks, mud pits, and parental lectures has you jittery. You're on edge expecting another punishment, and today, it's the silent treatment, a penalty so cold it makes the rod seem friendly. You're about to learn how being ignored can feel worse than a beating. You're mid-sentence carving a law about stolen barley when your stylus slips, smudging a wedge into a sad blob. Sir's there in a flash, his beard twitching like it's personally insulted. You brace for the usual stalks, maybe a trip to the mud pit, but he just stares, then turns away. "You're not here," he says, voice flat. The class goes quiet and you realize what's happening. You're invisible. No corrections, no shouts, just silence. You try to fix the tablet, but Sir ignores you, moving on to check Gilgamesh Jr.'s work instead. The other boys follow his lead, avoiding your eyes, not even whispering. It's like you've vanished, and it's chilling. A mainstream fact, Sumerian schools, especially in Ur, around 2500 BCE, used ostracism as a disciplinary tool, isolating students to enforce conformity and respect for the scribe's role in society. You sit there, tablet untouched, feeling like a ghost. You wave your stylus, hoping someone notices, but the boys keep their heads down and Sir acts like your heir. Even Gilgamesh Jr., who's usually good for a smirk, pretends you don't exist. You're tempted to shout, "Hey, I'm still here," but you know that'd make it worse. Defiance could land you in the stocks again. Instead, you carve quietly, trying to prove you're worth noticing, but the silence is heavy, pressing on your chest. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Nippur suggest teachers would pair the silent treatment with tasks like copying "I am nothing" in cuneiform, a psychological jab to humble, cocky students. Historians still argue whether this was to teach discipline or just to crush spirits. Some say it prepped scribes for the isolation of temple work. Others think it was plain cruelty. Either way, you're feeling it alone in a room full of people. The day drags and the silence grows louder. You finish your tablet, but Sir doesn't check it. He just stacks it with the others, not even glancing your way. You try to catch another boy's eye, but he looks through you, probably scared he'll get the same treatment. You're starting to see why scribes were so obedient. Nothing makes you crave approval like being erased. You glance at Nisaba's altar, her clay figurine staring blankly, and wonder if she's ignoring you too. Maybe she's got a divine silent treatment going, testing if you'll crack. You joke about it, but there's no one to hear it, and the quiet's eating at you. Another kid messes up later, misreading a law aloud. and Sir gives him the same treatment. You catch his eye, a flicker of shared misery, but neither of you speaks. Silence is the rule now. You're tempted to whisper a joke about being ghosts in the Aduba, but the risk's too high. Instead, you focus on your next tablet, carving each wedge like it's a plea to exist again. The sun's high, its light creeping through the doorway, but it doesn't warm you. You're cold not from the air, but from the absence of attention. You're starting to get why some boys beg for forgiveness. After a day of this, it's not just shame. It's loneliness, sharp as any rod. By late afternoon, Sir finally acknowledges you, tossing a curt "read it tomorrow" as he takes your tablet. It's not much, but it's something, and you cling to it like a lifeline. You're back in the world, but the sting of being ignored lingers. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Welcome back, invisible man." You mutter, "Better than being your partner." It's a weak jab, but it feels good to be heard again. You're learning the Aduba's not just about cuneiform. It's about surviving the quiet moments that make you question yourself. You glance at Nisaba, wondering if she's impressed. You didn't break. Probably not, but you're still here carving away, ready for whatever this place throws at you next. You're back in the Aduba, the air thick with the usual clay dust haze and the tense hum of boys scratching at tablets. Your mind still raw from yesterday's silent treatment, that cold isolation lingering like a chill you can't shake. Today you're tasked with preparing your own clay tablets, kneading, shaping, smoothing before you even get to carve a single wedge. It's grueling work, and your hands are already sore from days of gripping the stylus. The memory of the whip, the mud pit, and your parents' stern nods keeps you moving, but you're on edge knowing one slip could land you in another bizarre punishment. Today's lesson is a marathon of clay sharpening, a test of endurance that feels like the Aduba's way of saying, if you can't make the tablet, you don't deserve to write on it. You're elbow deep in a lump of wet clay, kneading it like bread dough when Sir stops by. His beard twitches as he inspects your work, and you brace for criticism. "Too lumpy," he says, tossing your half-formed tablet back into the pile. Again, "Perfect it, or you'll do this all day." Your heart sinks. This isn't just a redo. It's a punishment. You're to keep kneading, shaping, and smoothing until your tablets are flawless, no matter how long it takes. You glance at the other boys, some already carving, and feel a pang of envy. A mainstream fact, Sumerian scribes, especially in Uruk, around 2500 BCE, were expected to master tablet making as part of their training, as the quality of the clay directly affected the clarity of cuneiform records for temples and trade. You start over the clay, cold and sticky under your fingers. Your arms ache, and the repetitive motions knead, flatten, smooth, make your shoulders scream. Sir's watching not just you, but everyone ready to pounce on any imperfection. You're tempted to mutter that this clay's got a personal vendetta, but you keep quiet. Yesterday's silence taught you to stay invisible when you can. Gilgamesh Jr., already on his third tablet, leans over and whispers, "Bet you'll dream of clay tonight." You mutter back, "Only if it's chasing me." It's a weak joke, but it keeps you from losing it. The clay's unforgiving, and every lump or crack means starting over. You're starting to see why scribes were so meticulous. Sloppy tablets mean sloppy records, and Sumer doesn't forgive that. This punishment's a grind, not a spectacle, like the stocks or mud pit, but it's just as brutal. Your hands are raw, your back's knotted, and the pile of rejected tablets grows beside you. A quirky tidbit, some tablets from Nippur suggest students who failed at tablet making were forced to carry their botched attempts around the school, a humiliating reminder of their flaws. Historians still argue whether this was to teach craftsmanship or just to wear kids down. Some say it mimicked the real demands of scribe work, others think it was overkill. Either way you're feeling it, your fingers caked in clay, your patience fraying. You glance at Nasaba's altar, her figurine staring blankly, and wonder if she's judging your lumpy tablets. Maybe she's got a divine clay pile of her own. Another boy gets sent back to the clay pile for a cracked tablet, and you exchange a look, shared misery, but no words. The room's filled with the soft slap of clay and the occasional grunt of frustration. You're tempted to sneak a lump into Gilgamesh Jr.'s tunic for laughs, but Sir's too close, and you're not risking another round of silence, or worse. Instead, you focus smoothing the clay until it's mirror flat, even though your arms feel like they're about to fall off. The sun's climbing its heat, seeping through the doorway, and you're sweating through your tunic. You're starting to get why some kids dream of escaping to the fields. Anything's better than this endless grind. By late afternoon, you finally shape a tablet Sir deems acceptable. He doesn't praise you, just hands it back and says, "Carve it tomorrow." You're too tired to care. You're just glad to stop kneading. Your hands are cracked, your back's a knot, and you smell like a riverbank. Gilgamesh Jr. smirks, whispering, "You're practically a clay god now." You mutter, "Yeah, god of misery." It's a small victory, but it keeps you sane. You're learning the Aduba's not just about writing, it's about surviving the prep work one exhausting tablet at a time. You glance at Nisaba, wondering if she's impressed by your endurance. Probably not, but you're still here, clay under your nails, ready for whatever this place throws next. You're back in the Aduba, the air heavy with the usual clay dust haze and the nervous hum of styluses scratching tablets. Your hands are still raw from yesterday's clay sharpening marathon, and you're moving like a creaky cart trying not to draw Sir's eye. Today's task is copying a prayer to Inanna, the goddess of love and war, with intricate signs that twist your brain into knots. The memory of the whip, the silent treatment, and that donkey hauling fiasco keeps you on edge, but you're determined to nail this one. Except you're not perfect, and when you botch a sign for Glory Sir's there, his beard bristling like a storm. Today's punishment isn't physical, it's ritual. You're about to learn how Sumerian students redeem their mistakes by offering goods to appease their teachers and supposedly the gods. Your smudged tablets barely hit the table when Sir points to the door. "You've dishonored Inanna," he says, voice low but sharp. "Make it right." You're led to a small altar outside, not Nasaba's this time, but one for Inanna decked with dried dates and a clay bowl. You're told to offer something, your own rations, a trinket, anything of value to restore balance. You fish out a small copper bead from your pouch, a gift from your mother, and place it in the bowl, your stomach twisting. It's not just losing the bead. It's the shame of admitting you failed. A mainstream fact, Sumerian schools, especially in Ur, around 2500 BCE, used ritual offerings as a disciplinary tool, teaching students to atone for errors in a society where pleasing the gods was as crucial as writing clean cuneiform. You stand there, the other boys watching from the doorway, their whispers like flies buzzing around your head. Gilgamesh Jr., never missing a chance, mutters, "Hope Inanna likes cheap beads." You'd snap back, but your throat's tight and you're too busy praying the goddess doesn't smite you for your shaky wedges. The overseer standing nearby with his reed whip nods approvingly as you step back from the altar. This isn't just about the bead, it's about proving you're humble enough to fix your mistakes. You're starting to see why scribes were so careful. A bad tablet could anger a god, or at least the priests who speak for them. You trudge back to your seat, vowing to carve Inanna's prayer like it's a royal decree. This ritual punishment hits different. It's not the pain of the rod or the grind of the clay pile. It's personal, like you're bargaining with the divine. A quirky tidbit: some tablets from Nippur suggest students had to chant specific apologies while making offerings, like, I honor the stylus, repeated 10 times. Historians still argue whether this was about spiritual redemption or just another way to humble kids. Some say it tied scribes to temple rituals. Others think it was a power play by teachers. Either way, your copper bead's gone and you're feeling the weight of Inanna's invisible glare. You glance at her altar, wondering if she's counting your offerings, like Sir counts your mistakes. Another boy gets called out for a sloppy sign, and he's sent to offer a handful of barley. You watch him shuffle to the altar, head down, and feel a flicker of solidarity. You're all in this, scraping by with whatever you've got to keep the gods and Sir happy. You're tempted to whisper a joke about starting a black market for offerings, but the overseer's too close and you're not risking another trip outside. Instead, you focus on your tablet, carving each sign with a precision you didn't know you had. The prayer's long and your hands cramping, but you're not about to lose another bead, or worse, your lunch. The day drags on and the room's tense, everyone waiting for the next kid to fumble. The sun's high, its heat seeping through the doorway, and you're sweating through your tunic. You catch Gilgamesh Jr. sneaking a glance at your tablet, probably hoping you'll mess up again. You mutter, keep dreaming, boat doodler. He smirks, but you're both too tired for a real fight. You're starting to get why scribes were so devoted between the gods and the Eduba. There's no room for error. You glance at Inanna's altar again, the bowl glinting with your bead. Maybe she's pleased, or maybe she's just biding her time. Either way, you're still here carving away, ready for whatever the Eduba throws at you next. You're back in the Eduba, the air thick with the usual clay dust haze, and the nervous hum of boys scratching at tablets. Your pouch feels lighter without that copper bead you offered to Inanna yesterday, and your hands are still cramped from endless tablet sharpening. Today's task is copying a royal decree, long tedious signs about taxes and temple duties, and you're moving carefully, haunted by the whip, the silent treatment, and that humiliating donkey march. You're trying to keep your wedges crisp, but the pressure's relentless, and you're half expecting Sir to spring another mind game. Instead, you're about to face the ultimate punishment: exile from the Eduba, a fate reserved for those who can't hack it as scribes. One wrong move, and you're out. You're mid-decree, carving a sign for tribute, when your stylus slips, smudging a wedge into a messy blob. Sir's there in a heartbeat, his beard practically crackling with rage. You think a king tolerates this, he snaps, holding your tablet up for the class to see. You brace for the rod or the mud pit, but he goes quiet, eyes cold. 3 strikes, he says. 1 more, and you're gone. Your stomach drops. Exile. That's not just a punishment, it's a death sentence for your dreams. A mainstream fact: Sumerian schools, especially in Uruk, around 2500 BCE, could expel students for repeated failures, as tablets from Nippur show, since only the best scribes could serve the temples or palaces. You sit back down, heart pounding, and try to focus. Exile means no scribe future, no palace job, just a life of herding goats or hauling barley. Your parents' faces flash in your mind, your father's stern nod, your mother's quiet hope, and you know they'd never forgive you. Gilgamesh Jr., usually quick with a jab, just gives you a wide-eyed look, like even he knows this is serious. You're tempted to whisper a joke about running off to join a merchant caravan, but your throat's too dry. You carve again, each wedge a plea to stay in the game. The room's tense, everyone's sensing the stakes. Nobody wants to be the kid who gets kicked out. Exile's not just about leaving, it's about shame. You'd be marked as a failure. Your family's silver wasted your name. A cautionary tale. A quirky tidbit: some tablets hint that exile students were sometimes made to return their styluses in a public ceremony like surrendering a sword. Historians still argue whether this was to deter others or just to twist the knife. Some say it was practical, others think it was pure humiliation. Either way, you're one mistake from finding out. You glance at Nisaba's altar, her clay figurine staring blankly, and wonder if she's rooting for you or ready to sign your expulsion. Maybe she's got a divine blacklist and your name's creeping up. Another boy fumbles a recitation later, and Sir gives him the same warning: one more strike, and he's out. You catch his eye, a flicker of shared dread, but you both keep quiet. The Aduba's a gauntlet, and exile's the final trap. You're carving like your life depends on it now, each sign a fight to stay. The sun's high, its heat seeping through the doorway, and you're sweating through your tunic. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Don't choke now, tablet smasher." You mutter back, "Better than doodling boats." It's a weak jab, but it keeps you grounded. You're starting to see why scribes were so sharp. Failure wasn't just a bad day. It was banishment. By afternoon, you finish the decree and Sir inspects it without a word. No praise, no punishment, just a nod. You're still in, but the threat of exile hangs like a storm cloud. You're exhausted, not just from carving, but from the fear of losing everything. The other boys are quieter now, all feeling the same pressure. You're learning the Aduba's not just about cuneiform, it's about surviving the specter of failure, one wedge at a time. You glance at Nisaba, wondering if she's impressed. You're still here. Probably not, but you're clinging to your stylus, ready for whatever this place throws next. You're back in the Aduba one last time, the air thick with the familiar clay dust haze and the soft scratch of styluses on tablets. Your hands are calloused from weeks of carving your back, scarred from the whip, your pride dented from shaming, and your nerves frayed from the threat of exile. Today's task is copying a hymn to Nisaba herself, a final test of your skill and endurance. Every wedge feels like a plea to stay in this grueling school, where the mud pit silent treatment and donkey hauling have taught you more about survival than cuneiform. You're on edge, but there's a strange calm too. You've made it this far, and now you're reflecting on how these odd punishments shaped Sumerian scribes into the backbone of a civilization. This is the legacy of the Aduba, and you're living it. You're carving Nisaba's hymn, each sign a tribute to the goddess who's watched your every stumble. Your wedges are sharper now, your hand steadier, but the memories of pain and humiliation linger. The whip taught you precision, the stalks patience, the mud pit humility. Even the silent treatment, cruel as it was, forced you to focus inward to prove your worth without applause. You glance at Gilgamesh Jr., who's actually trying today, his usual smirk replaced by a furrowed brow. You're all change molded by the Aduba's brutal lessons. A mainstream fact: Sumerian scribes trained in schools like those in Uruk around 2500 BCE were critical to society, recording everything from taxes to myths. Their skills honed by a system that didn't forgive mistakes. As you carve, you think about the scribes who came before you, men who sat in these same dusty rooms facing the same punishments. Their tablets, laws, hymns, trade records survived centuries, proof of their grit. You're starting to see why the Aduba was so harsh. A scribe's error could starve a city or anger a god. A quirky tidbit: some tablets from Nippur suggest successful scribes were honored with titles like Master of the Wedge, a badge of surviving the Aduba's gauntlet. Historians still argue whether the punishments were overkill or essential. Some say they built resilience for high-stakes roles. Others think they were just a cultural obsession with order. Either way, you're feeling the legacy in every aching muscle, every careful wedge. You finish the hymn, and Sir inspects it, his beard still as intimidating as ever. He nods. No punishment today, just a curt acceptable. It's not praise, but it's enough. You're still here, not exiled, not broken. You glance at Nasaba's altar, her figurine seeming less judgmental, now maybe even proud. You're tempted to whisper a thanks, but you settle for a nod like your equals. Gilgamesh Jr. leans over, whispering, "Bet you're Nisaba's favorite now." You mutter back, "Only if she likes smudged tablets." It's a weak joke, but it feels like a victory lap. You're starting to understand the scribe's legacy, not just writing, but enduring, turning pain into precision. The day ends, and you step outside the sun low over Uruk's ziggurat. You're not a scribe yet, but you're closer, shaped by every sting, every shame, every slog through the mud. The Aduba's a crucible, and you're coming out sharper, ready for the palace or temple, where your tablets might outlive you. You're carrying the legacy of Sumer's scribes, their discipline etched into your bones. Now let's slow things down. Picture the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, the Euphrates murmuring nearby. You're tired, but there's a quiet pride in your chest. You've survived the Aduba's trials, from the whip's bite to the silence's chill. The city hums around you, merchants packing up, priests chanting in the distance, and you feel part of it, connected to something ancient and vast. Your stylus, worn but trusty, rests in your pouch, a reminder of the wedges you've carved, the lessons you've endured. Let the day's weight slip away like clay, smoothed under your hands. You're stronger now, not just in skill, but in spirit, ready to dream under Sumer's starry sky. Sleep well, knowing you've walked the path of scribes, and tomorrow's another chance to write your story.